Shabbat Shalom, everyone. If you were to go online or open up a dictionary and look for the definition of evil, you would find it defined in a number of different ways. In some dictionaries, they'll talk about evil as being that which is bad, painful, or harmful. They might go on to add that it is something that is immoral or wrong. And then a third definition would include the words heinous. However, from a Jewish perspective, none of those definitions are sufficient. For Judaism understands that the moral imperative is summed up in the words v'ahavta l're'echa kamocha, as found in the book of Leviticus in chapter 19. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And so from the Jewish perspective, we are taught that every person, every human being who crosses my path, I am obligated to them. I am obligated to serve. I am obligated to help them carry their burden. It does not matter whether I know them or not. It does not matter whether they're familiar to me or not. It does not matter whether they are alike me or not. All that matters is that they are there. And when I face the other, I am obligated to that person. I am obligated to see them for who they are and to help carry their burden. And when we understand that the core Jewish moral imperative is to see the other and be of service to the other, we understand then evil is not just something that's bad or painful or hurtful. We understand that evil is not something that is morally wrong or even heinous. From the Jewish perspective, a person is evil when they not only no longer see the other, but they feel they have no obligation to them except perhaps even to wipe the other out. From a Jewish perspective, that is evil. To not see the other, to not realize you have an obligation to the other, no matter who they are, and to believe that you are thoroughly justified in wiping them off the face of the earth. That, my friends, is evil. I believe with this definition of evil, we can use it as a key to unlock the last part of this week's Torah portion in a way that can help us understand and help us realize our obligations in the face of all that has happened in this world this past week. At the end of this week's Torah portion, what we were actually just reading, we read about how Jacob flees from Lavan. Why does Jacob flee from Lavan? Jacob had served Lavan now for 20 years. And in the course of those 20 years of serving for Lavan, he had been tricked out of the bride that he thought he was going to marry. But in addition to that, Lavan continually changed the terms of their agreement, the terms by which Jacob was to serve Lavan. And after 20 years, Jacob was like, enough already. I am quite literally out of here. And so, he picks up his wives. He picks up his concubines. He picks up his children. He picks up all of his herds and he flees. He runs away. For he can see in Lavan's face that Lavan no longer looks upon him the same way. And he realizes it is time to get out. Now, in the process of leaving, what Jacob doesn't know is that Rachel will seize these teraphim, the household gods of Lavan. And because of that, as well as because of the fact that Jacob just happened to leave with his daughters, Lavan will go chasing after Jacob. And he'll catch up to Jacob. And just before he catches up to Jacob, he has a dream. And in the dream, God comes to him and says, listen, you do not harm or even do anything good to this Jacob. Just leave him alone. And so then Lavan will present himself to Jacob after overtaking him. And he'll say, why did you leave? Why did you run? Why did you not at least let me say goodbye to my children and my grandchildren? And Jacob lays into him and says, look, let's not kid ourselves here. You have cheated me, you have lied to me, you have tricked me these 20 years. You have changed in your feelings towards me, and it was time to get out, and so I got. And Laban will accept what Jacob is saying. And the two of them will gather a stone, and they'll say, let this stone serve as a witness between you and I. They say, you stay on that side, and I stay on this side. And they'll call the place Gal-Aid. For the stone will serve as an aid, as a witness, as a boundary marker between the two of them. And they'll put together a matzeva, a pillar, and then they'll gather a pile of stones. And that stone, that pile of stone, serves as the border between the two, with each of them agreeing to never cross into each other's side. It is as if the Torah understood the phrase, good fences make good neighbors. And that when two people simply cannot agree, when two people have a history that is loaded with pain and anger and hurt, that sometimes the only thing you can do is separate oneself, create a fence as this pillar of stones was meant to serve, and just leave each other alone. All well and good, one might say to the Torah. A useful piece of advice, one might say to the Torah. But what happens, we can ask the Torah, what happens when one side doesn't stay on their side? What happens when my neighbor refuses to abide by the boundary and totally comes over and encroaches into the other side? What do we do then, we might ask the Torah? I believe the answer is to first understand what one's neighbor's goal is, what the neighbor is trying to achieve. And as we reflect upon the events of the past week, and we reflect upon the things that were said, and we reflect upon the history of these past years, it is hard not to look at an organization like Hamas and not see them as evil. The organization. For what else can we say about an organization that has the stated and explicit purpose to destroy another people? What clearer definition of evil can there be from the point of view of Jewish tradition? They're not just looking to do bad things. They're not just doing wrong things. When the goal of an organization and the actions that they take are to wipe out another people and to support those who would do the same, that is evil. They no longer see the other, and they feel they are entitled to wipe us out. My friends, that is evil. And that's when the Torah portion comes into play. And that's when we have to remember, Gal Ed, the stones give witness. And that needs to be our job as well. We need to give witness. The stone, as I said, was placed upon a matzeva, and the word matzeva comes from the Hebrew word nun sadivav, or nun sadivet. And that means to take a stand, to be strong. And that's what it requires of us, to be witnesses and to give witness. It requires that we are strong and say what we see and what we believe. And I believe we need to be able to call Hamas for what it is. It is evil. And the reason why I believe this is so important to say, if not obvious to some and uncomfortable to others, is because first, if we're to see and understand ourselves as moral human beings, there have to be things in this world that we understand are evil. There have to be things in this world when people threaten to wipe us out that we are willing to look at straight in the face and say, that is evil. And if we can't call anything in this world evil, then my friends, we have completely lost any sense of what the word means. And we're reduced to what we just saw in our political season, with people calling each other evil over differences in policies, which frankly is disgusting and pathetic. You may dislike the policies of the other person, but frankly, they are not evil. They're not seeking to wipe us out, but Hamas is seeking to wipe us out. Iran is seeking to wipe out Israel. That is evil. And we have to have the courage to call it such. It's also, by the way, essential for us here in the United States and Jewish communities outside of the land of Israel to be able to call and identify Hamas for what it is, not just for our own sense of perspective and well-being as moral human beings, but also for our brethren in Israel. Our brethren in Israel are standing there on the front line fighting. They're sending their children to the front lines to fight. They get on buses and they can be brought into the conflict. It's not enough for us to say or just think that they are exercising their right to defend their borders. Yes, I understand that's what they're doing, but quite honestly, their fight is much more than just defending their borders. When the other side is seeking to wipe you out, you're not just defending your borders. You are fighting against evil. And we need to say it just to give them the chizuk, just to give them the strength, so that we can at least on an emotional level resonate with them and understand and show our support. Not just in terms of the things that we send, which are great. Not just in terms of showing up at demonstrations and rallies and coming together for services, which is also wonderful. But also just to be able to say, we get it. When our children come home from a day at school and they are picked on by a bully, the reaction of most parents, that initial reaction, is you want to go to school and beat that kid up. Because that's our kid. That's our family. My friends, the people in Israel, that's our family. And someone is killing our family. Someone is bombing our family. And someone doesn't care who they bomb. That is evil. We can't be so polite all the time. We can't be so polite and fall into the diplomatic language of Israel has the right to exist. Really? I really need to say that? I mean, talk about among the most insulting things that I've heard this past week. Israel has the right to exist. Of course it does. Why is that even a question? Why does that get said? Israel has the right to defend itself. Really? Thank you. I wouldn't have known it unless you told me. Oh, come on. Honestly, the level of our discourse over this needs to fully take into account and reflect what Israel faces. Now, let me also be clear in what I am not saying. The Palestinian people are not evil. The Palestinian people cannot be lumped together with Hamas and not understood to have rights of their own, dreams of their own, aspirations of their own. As naive as it may be, I still believe that a two-state solution is the best solution out there, and one that at least offers the hope that the Palestinians can find that which we for 2,000 years yearned for. we can understand where the Palestinians are coming from. And we need to understand that and understand that they are not evil, and we cannot lump them together with Hamas, which as an organization needs to be labeled for what it is. Also, just because we say something is evil, my friends, does not give us a carte blanche in terms of our response. Jewish tradition understands that there are, in fact, many ways of dealing with evil. One is to fight it. Another is to ignore it. A third is to contain it. Our tradition contains all of these responses and more. And therefore, we cannot hesitate to call something evil because we're afraid of what that power will give us to do. But we also understand that by calling something evil, it does not give us absolute power to do anything that we want. And to its credit, and it can be said as many times as we like, the Israeli army does as much as one would hope in order to minimize those civilian casualties. By the way, do they do it perfectly? No. Do they do it every time? No. Will they make mistakes? Yes. Will Palestinians, innocent Palestinians, get hurt? Yes. Will they get killed? Yes. Is that tragic? Yes. But in a less than perfect world, when we fight evil, that will happen. And we need to have the courage and resolve to understand that, even as we do all that we can, as we are obligated to do all that we can, to minimize that happening. This world is not black and white. This world is not like the Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, where the good side is very good and the evil side is only evil. But just because it's complicated does not relieve us of our obligation to fight it. And as tragic as it is, and it is tragic, and it should pain us, as tragic as it is that innocent civilians will get killed, we cannot let that lack of perfection be the enemy of our obligation to do something and fight evil. It is a hard balance to strike, but it's one that we must. But in striking the balance, let us never lose sight of what we fight. We can express all the sympathies that we want and that we feel are appropriate, and they are appropriate, to the Palestinians. We can urge and beg and plead and desire that as few Palestinians get hurt or killed as possible. But my friends, this is a fight and a war against evil. And let us never lose sight of that. Now, I'm not a military strategist, obviously. I'm just a rabbi. And I leave it to those who are more involved in these things to lay out the proper paths of responding to what happened last week, what's happened in the years past, and what will inevitably befall the state of Israel in the days, months, and years to come. But no matter what tactic is used, let us understand and be clear about something here. That our first obligation as Jews is to give witness, just as those stones did in the Torah portion. It is to give witness and to call evil what it is and call it out for what it is. But unlike this week's Torah portion, I can't just pile together a bunch of stones in my driveway and say, look, there it is, my witness against evil. On the contrary, I've just got me. But that has to be enough. Because I am the son of Minna and Barney Bernhard. And my parents taught me the difference between right and wrong. And because I am a Jew, and as a Jew, I have been educated and brought up in a tradition that demands that we understand the difference between good and evil. And I am a human being. And as a human being, it is absolutely essential that I speak out when evil rears its ugly head. And make no mistake, evil reared its head this week, and we must speak out and continue to do so. For it is in this way that you and I fulfill our obligation to give witness. And in doing so, we just might help make sure that Israel lives. Am Yisrael Chai. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.